This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by OWC, Isotope, Atom Audio, JZ Microphones, and Spectra 1964. You're hearing my voice right now on the JZ V12 microphone through the Spectra 1964 STX100D mic pre and C610 complementer with Isotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron all recorded safely onto an OWC SSD and mixed on Atom Audio monitors. Please remember to check out our awesome sponsors using the link in the show notes. It's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
Vinyl allows the brain this really cool deal. When you put the record on and you play it and you listen, you don't have anything at all to compare it to except for silence. And then you hear side one, and then you stop, and then you flip it over. And in that period of time, your brain resets. Your brain resets to another reality.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. The JZ Microphone Vintage Series are built by hand in Latvia, featuring the patented Golden Drop capsule design for enhanced clarity that will give your recordings the classic vintage tone. Our friends at JZ Microphones have also come up with a special offer only available to Recording Studio Rockstars listeners. Use the limited time coupon ROCKSTAR to get 40% off the V67, V47, or V12 microphones. And to make this deal even better, they'll throw in a free shock mount worth $120 for a limited time at jzmic.com. Atom Audio can provide all your monitor needs, whether you are setting up a first-time home studio for recording music or podcasts, or a world-class full-size studio for professional mixing and mastering in stereo or immersive sound. Featuring the XART tweeter and custom DSP onboard processing, the new A-series monitors will perfectly adapt to your studio. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for you with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw. Welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Vance Powell, a multi-Grammy award-winning producer, engineer, and mixer, and owner of Sputnik Sound in Nashville.
Co-owner.
Yeah. You thought of something. What did I say? Oh, co-owner. Yeah, I was headed there. Yeah, co-owner with Mitch Dane. I was just, still finishing the sentence. But
yeah, sorry.
Vance's many credits include Chris Stapleton, the White Stripes, Arctic Monkeys, and Wolfmother, to name just a few of the many artists he's worked with. Vance is a repeat guest on the podcast, and you can hear his previous episodes on RSR number 2. It was the second episode we did, 171, and then again on 293 to hear more about his backstory and get some great tips and talk on mixing and mixing in Atmos as well. Today, we'll catch up with Vance and see what's new in rock and roll. And over at Sputnik, find out more about mixing in both stereo and Atmos. And Vance also has a ton of great videos on YouTube, Rockstars, if you just simply want to go learn more about the studio. He's teaching all kinds of stuff over there. And he has some excellent courses over at puremix.net. Please welcome Vance Powell back to Recording Studio Rockstars. Vance, are you ready to rock, dude?
Oh, I was born to rock.
Born to rock.
I was born to rock.
A mama's rocker. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, it's weird. My mom would agree, but yeah.
So last time we chatted was a little while ago.
It was a year ago. But
yeah,
this is kind of do this every year.
Yeah, and then of course this comes out later.
I just show up over here and just knock on your door and say, "Hey, let's
do a thing."
Yeah, let's do a thing.
Let's talk. Let's do some podcasting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when it comes out later and then you listen to it, you're like, wait a minute, that was like ages ago. What?
The other thing is, oh, yeah, no, everything I just said was wrong.
Nice. So last time we chatted, you had put in a new Atmos system over at the studio. You built a hell of a front wall.
Yes.
to make your speakers sound
which
great.
is really just the best thing about it.
It's just
the
wall.
best thing about it is just that wall, what it did to the room, what it changed, all that.
Really,
it's really great. Yeah,
just sonically the room, like even if you had
just got tighter and better. And
yeah,
I mean, there's a few thousand pounds of a couple thousand pounds of drywall and plywood and drywall and plywood and drywall and plywood
and that's that front wall where the speakers are. The back of the speakers are toward the wall, and before you had that, it was probably letting some of the sound escape through the wall.
Well, it was definitely resonating in the wall and through the wall. Yes, it was. And there was a square corner there. So there was a 90-degree corner that was always problematic.
Yeah.
And that corner is, it's every corner, every corner in any studio is always problematic, but it's way less problematic now.
That's cool. Well, I look forward to seeing it. I haven't been over to see it yet. Maybe next one we'll bring this
Christmas
over
party.
there. Christmas party. I'll see it then. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, we just dated ourselves rock stars there, but that's great.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, some of your thoughts now that you've been mixing in Atmos for the past year, if you want to. Has it been?
Well,
have you figured some new things
that there's
out?
a lot of things that I believed that were not exactly true. That one of the things about Atmos is that, in fact, it is this great format for delivering that can be, if I make a mix that ends up in a movie, what happens is that my mix gets re-rendered by the cinema renderer, which is quite a bit different than the music renderer. So that was something that I didn't really quite understand at the time because it was sort of before we really got into it. I've done like 5. I'm not going after the remix market. There's
Right.
a lot of work there, and there's a lot of people who spend a lot of money to build Atmos rooms and are doing that work. I'm actually sort of more of, I don't really want to do any of that, not because there's anything wrong with it. It's great. It's good
Just don't
work.
have to hear people complain about how it sounds different than the original record.
Well, to some degree, but I think the bigger thing for me is that I just kind of want to do the records that have something to do with. Now, I think if somebody came to me and wanted me to remix some, insanely classic record that I loved, it would be really hard for me to turn down. But at the same time, I don't know. I might.
But you might go back and mix. I mean, of course, you have records that you worked on that go back, 10 years, 20 years.
20 years.
So you might be happy to remix those ones.
I
don't know if remixing is the right word. Is that the right word? It's like a new thing.
I think remix is actually the right word. It's not a recall. It's a remix.
Yeah.
It's a different beast all around. And I think that there's good value in trying to copy, or I say copy, but to try to get the original vibe of the original mix. There's also really good reason to just completely do it different.
Yeah.
The problem is that the way that Apple's delivering it, which is exactly the way it should be delivered. In other words, like if you have the ability to listen to a spatial mix, they should deliver it to you, and that's what they do. But there is a little bit of almost like I want to say curation. Sometimes people don't want to hear those.
Yeah.
And sometimes, sometimes Apple does really weird things, like make their own spatial version of a stereo track, even though you don't want it, because the non-spatial flag in the file wasn't thrown or whatever.
Yeah.
I just had a mix. It's a live record. One of my client, Trey Anastasio's, did this record's not out yet, but it will be probably by the time that this comes out, so I can talk about it. But in 2020, the end of 2020, in I think October, November, Trey and his band Tab did a string of dates at the Beacon Theater. Now, of course, this is deep in the bottom of the COVID, whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did was they didn't play for any people. They took an interesting view of this. They turned the band around so that the empty hall was behind them. And they basically played to the stagehands, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
They played to the back wall of the stage. And they streamed it on Twitch. So every show is 3 hours long, no break.
Which way is the camera looking?
The camera is looking out into the and the band. Basically, the drums. You step off the back, you're in the front row.
Yeah,
so it's a very the video is very cool, but there's no audience, and so it was a pretty massive project. It was 8 3-hour 96K 128 track, files.
And you got to be there for that too.
I wasn't there for it. No, I wasn't. Fish has a very complicated live recording broadcasting thing. Right. They just recorded. They set it up downstairs at the Beacon somewhere, and he put up some speakers, and they just
And where's the Beacon?
Beacon's in New York. And they also one of the really cool things is that they spec'd 88 channels of Rupert Neve remote Dante mic pre's for the recording, and now they're taking those Rupert Neve mic pre's are the front end of Fish's live tour, so the front end of the monitors and front end of the front of house desk now. So that's it's pretty cool. 88 channels worth.
So if they're Dante, that essentially means that the mic pre's are delivering a digital signal over a simple cable that can go a hell of a long distance if you want it to.
Yep.
And you can control it
from fiber
from
or
the controller,
Ethernet or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're remote controlled. And so they sit on stage, the microphones the cables plug right into them, and then they end up distributing out to wherever they go.
Yeah.
And so, but there was a lot of interesting things about it. There were audience mics, or what do we call, I guess, audience mics, hall mics, but it wasn't a PA. So it just sort of the hall, which is a nice sounding room. The Beacon's nice. I've mixed in there years and years ago when I toured. It's nice sounding, but it sounded like nothing. It sounded like a band practicing next door.
Well, what it reminds me of is when you have somebody do a scratch vocal and they're playing electric guitar and the amp's isolated in another room, and then you just have this thin, electric string sound coming through the vocal mic.
Every Chris Stapleton record ever.
Yeah.
That's part of the charm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so I had to sort of make the sound of the hall, which was interesting. But the point of all that being is that we sent the files, the mastered record. Pete Lyman mastered it. Wonderful job. It's 6 sides of vinyl, so, and between Trey and Trey's management, they sent me, I think about 60 songs, 60 some songs to curate. And I think we curated it down to, I think it's 18 or 19. But even at 18 or 19, it's 6 full sides of vinyl. So, so three records.
Wow.
And that took a long time. All that being said is when we sent the mastering to them, to Trey, he said, I think something's really wrong. This sounds terrible. And I was like, what are you listening on? He goes, oh, my AirPod Max. And I'm like, yeah, turn spatial off. When he turned spatial off, he's like, oh, why is that on?
Yeah.
I go, well, first of all, for some reason, your AirPods are playing in spatial. They're making something happen that's not real. And yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah. It's almost like adding reverb to a mix.
So there's some traps. Here's my thoughts on Atmos. I think Atmos is really, really cool. It is really great in the room. It's not exactly great anywhere else. It's pretty good in the binaural render in headphones that you know and love. It's pretty great. But just the difference even switching to the Apple renderer, which keeps getting better. So just, I don't want to sound like I'm poo-pooing here. But just going from the Dolby renderer, binaural render to the Apple binaural render, is quite different. And so it feels to me like sometimes you're kind of mixing at a moving target.
Right.
You know,
hey, that's how we all feel at the start of mixing anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like that deal of going to another studio and them not having any speakers that you've ever used. And then about every 10 minutes, they change speakers on you.
Right.
And you can never really figure out what's going on. And I've recorded entire records that way before and just felt like I have no idea what I'm hearing. And that's when I pull back on the, all the things I talk about all the time about, committing and all. That's when I'm just like, okay, cool. Here, I know this mic pre is going to work on this track. And I put it up and I don't do any EQ to it. And we just record it as flat as fritter and we sort it out later.
Yeah.
But you can't do that with this. You can't because you're delivering a mix. The mixes, I have AirPods, I have AirPod Pros, I have AirPod Max. It's vastly different between each one.
And the Max is the one that goes over your head.
Yeah, it's the over ears, which are awesome to listen to music and definitely awesome in airports. Yeah. The noise canceling is ridiculous.
Now, in all fairness, I put on the Pro earbuds. My brother had a pair. I put in the noise canceling and immediately I was like, oh my God, the low end in this music mix I'm listening to sounds terrible with that on. Mm-hmm. Have you noticed that happening here and there occasionally?
I mean, noise masking is kind of
like you're adding something to the sound, to the mix.
Well, you're taking the outside sounds and adding to it. So yeah, you should turn noise masking off. If you really want to get down to it, you should turn noise masking off for sure. And you should just listen in your room and just put the headphones on and try to listen to it in your room. Apple did this year make a method where we can listen to that binaural render in real time. And then the latest version of Logic, which I haven't done mine yet, but only because I just have been busy doing other things. I guess it is actually even more streamlined now.
That's great.
But to be honest with you, it's still a bit of a moving target.
Right.
I mixed a record for New West. I didn't mix the record. I mixed it in Atmos by a band called 49 Winchester. And the stems were super simple, 8 or 9, 10 stems maybe, tops, stereo stems. And it did not take very long. It was really good. And my goal was just to make it sound, the stereo render to sound as good or not better than the mix, which is, sure. We get to, I get to rethink. I get to use all their sounds and then all the sounds on the record. And then I get to build a whole nother house on top of it. Wouldn't everybody love to do that?
Yeah.
I get to rethink the wheel, And then in the Atmos, just to make it so it felt like it was a little bigger, like a little bit of things. The organ is kind of always across the record in a certain spot across the record. So playing it back, the organ, you're always going to feel like the organ player is over here on the left, and maybe he's a little, upstage of me, so to speak, which for those of you who've never done live sound or anything, that means behind you, upstage. But then I did a record that I actually mixed, this record, War and Treaty. And we did the Atmos based on stems that I made. And I really struggle with, I love it in my room. It sounds cool in my room, but I really struggle with it in the AirPods.
Mm. And have you had a chance to hear?
And of course, there's no mastering because because the
haven't
record
figured it
labels
out
aren't
yet.
paying for mastering. Oh, well, they figured it out. A lot of people have done it.
Really?
I mean, Mike Romanowski and George Massenberg and Eric Schilling and Emin Silly, they won, 3 Grammys this year for Alicia Keys. Why? Well, because Alicia Keys is paying for it, and she paid to have it mastered and have it tweaked and have it made right. But the labels aren't doing that. They're literally just taking your ADM and approving it and shipping it off. And so the interesting part about all this is that, and I've told a lot of people this, I think maybe I said it on your show, Atmos music is the Wild West. It's a weird Wild West because it's either going to be a land of discovery like the West was, or it's going to fall into the ocean. One of those two things is going to happen. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get better. It's going to get great. And it'll end up being sort of the I don't want to say de facto, but a type of de facto delivery medium, or it will disappear.
Do you think people
and
thought
just be film?
Was that the thinking with stereo when it came after mono? Do you think that there was a lot of doubt that it was going to stick around?
Yeah, people hated it. It's the same thing. I mean, 5.1 and surround was awesome, except the delivery medium was terrible.
Right.
There was only 2 ways to deliver it to customers. DVD-A, terrible format, because you had to have a DVD, and SACD, equally terrible format because you had to have an SACD player.
Right.
And you couldn't get it on your phone. Atmos gives you the sort of the ability, I don't know if that's the right word. It gives you the ability to deliver it on something that there's, 3 billion of these or however many of these there are. How many million iPhones are there in America? It's a lot. It's taken over in America.
Yeah, it's the first time. It's the first time there's been an attempt to make something new, but make it work across all the existing.
I think that we're just going to find that it's an emerging format that will need to be refined. And the people who are there, the guys at Apple, they want this to work. The guys at Dolby, they want this to work.
Right.
Everybody wants it to work. It's an investment. It was, I think, all in for me, about $80,000 investment.
That's an investment.
That's an investment. Now, I completely replaced my big speakers. We did all this construction. I mean, even down to, I had to repaint my ceiling because there were all kinds of pencil marks all over the ceiling for, the math to where the speaker was and then drawing on the ceiling and, and just all, all that sort of stuff. You hire painters to come in and they have to paint over, as we just talked about, over your desk and over your gear and under the clouds. And,
it was crazy painting my studio because just changing the wall color, I realized as we were talking about, I was like, wait a minute, where do you put all the stuff that's in the studio? And just had to go in a giant pile with plastic over it just to change the wall colors. Yeah,
well, the control room for me, I was luckily, I was out of town. I have really good friends who are musicians, and I had mixed their record, and I was just like, hey, why don't we barter this? And they were like, you bet. So, nice. And they're professional painters. That's what they do.
Yeah.
They're pros. So they got a great deal. They got a great deal. Yeah. They just had to paint my ceiling.
Right.
But if you've been in my control room, and I know you have, there's a lot of stuff. A
lot of ceiling. Yeah, I did some barter in my studio when I first did it. And Rockstars, I definitely recommend it if you get a chance, if you know somebody who's...
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times the people who make stuff also like making music.
Sometimes, yeah.
But I used to have, good. Right where you're sitting, Vance, there's a couch now, just an IKEA couch, which is actually pretty comfortable. Mm-hmm. But there used to be this wooden whole complex seat and shelves and everything. And this guy built it for me. Yeah, he built it for me, and it was his dad was a shipbuilder, Lauren, and so he just built it. It looked like a ship. It was great. But it was time to switch it up. I put that up in the front of the house. Psst. Hey, rock stars, over here. I've got a secret to tell you about how I get a consistent sound mixing over 1,000 hours of recording studio rock stars. My secret is using Isotope, RX, Ozone, and Neutron on every single episode. Right now, you're hearing RX breath control, D-click, D-clip, DS, D-plosive, voice denoise, Ozone multiband compression, Neutron EQ, and limiting, all from Isotope. Go to isotope.com/rockstars and use the secret code ROCK10 and get 10% off any plug-in purchase from Isotope. You can tell your friends, but, be cool about it. My recording studio is proudly powered by OWC, and I love how it's improved and sped up my workflow. OWC can connect all your audio work drives, trackballs, mix controllers, MIDI keyboards, audio interfaces, displays, or cameras so that you can work fast and focus on making your best record ever. Go check out the Mini Stack STX, Thunder Bay 4, or Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars to find the perfect solution for your studio from OWC. Well, very cool. So I guess a question I have about the way that Atmos translates is thinking, so far we hear discussions about building the speakers really well in the control room to create it. And then we hear the other end, which is somebody listening on earbuds, but I haven't really heard any. Oh, and then we hear about like Atmos sound bars and things, which I guess
I have one at my house.
I heard it once before and I thought it was pretty interesting, but I still feel like it's a bit of hocus pocus. It
depends. It depends.
But I mean, I imagine somebody's going to like doing surround speakers in a living room for watching movies. Maybe people are setting that up.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Sonos Arc, which is an Atmos bar, and then I have sub. And then I have rear surrounds, which are all Atmos, all Wi-Fi too.
Okay, so you don't have to run wires and cables.
Wires, all Wi-Fi.
But you got to plug them in.
You got to plug them in, yeah. And what I did was one of them's in the corner, and I just ran some Panduit, little plastic Panduit up to it, and then painted it the wall color.
For the power cable.
For the power cable. Yeah. And then on the other side, luckily there was an outlet right there, which was really nice. It was the outlet, the light that's lights up all the stuff on my mantle, or whatever. Somebody put an outlet right there.
Nice.
For my Christmas lights over the mantle. And so I put the other one there. And a lot of people have been to my house. A lot of people have watched TV, watched movies, watched sports.
Yeah.
And it is really impressive sound.
So that's interesting. So the sound bar, now I'm thinking about the sound bar the way you described it as something that can give you center, it can give you left and right, and then it probably is able to sort of throw the sounds off the walls.
It has speakers on the outside that throw out sideways, and then it has speakers that throw onto the ceiling.
Right, so you're sort of hearing the reflection off the walls and the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then those back ones give you the behind it.
Yeah, the focus.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. All right.
It's a little Bose 901 style there, if you remember those speakers.
Oh, I remember the 901s.
Yeah.
There was a kid in my dorm when I was a freshman in high school who had, I was off at a boarding school and they had, I guess it was like his dad's old 901 system and it was loud as fuck. It sounded great too.
They sent you to boarding school with the Finkelstein shit kid.
It was
awesome. That joke.
And I feel like those 901s would light up too when they were getting really loud. Did they?
They had a bulb in them.
A bulb, right? And they'll come out the back.
Yeah, to soak current.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those were interesting speakers. But for those people who don't know, the 901 had one speaker on the front of the cabinet, just one speaker, and then had 8 speakers on the rear
They
of the
looked like jet engines firing out the back, right?
Yeah, well, those were the ports for the one speaker in the front. It had one, I think a 6 or an 8 in the front, which is kind of the low speaker. And then in the back, it had 8 3-inch speakers.
And were they just sort of filling in the sound bouncing off the walls?
The whole idea of them were they were supposed to go in corners and they were supposed to bounce sound off the wall. And I never really got it. And then they had an EQ. You had to have the EQ.
I remember as a kid growing up, my parents, I grew up in Massachusetts, and my dad or somebody in my family would talk about having met or known like Dr. Bose.
Yeah, he's a Boston guy.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend who had a pair of 802s, which are the PA version.
Yeah.
And if anybody ever heard those things were pretty amazing. They were really amazing. And he would loan them to me. We played a club. I had this big ass PA system that had like A7s basically as the tops, 215s and a 2-inch horn. And we played this club where it was just the horn was just too much. So I would use his 802s as everything above 2K. I would use them as
So you just
tweeter.
disconnect the horns on your rig?
Oh, yeah, just disconnect the horns on the rig.
Hit the
and put them
15s, yeah.
as everything above 2K. And it was crazy how great it sounded.
Oh,
all
that's
cones.
awesome.
The whole PA was all cones.
That's great.
It was frightening how good it sounded.
I have a vocal master upstairs that's all cones.
All cones,
I don't know if it's going to fill up a club, but apparently it used to back in the day.
Yeah, this would definitely fill up a club.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, they're good. We're lucky. There goes the espresso machine in the background. I don't know if you'll hear it, rock stars. My mixes are too good. You won't even notice it.
Espresso right now?
No, it's shutting itself down and spitting all over the countertop.
Well, no, there's a cup there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's Darth Vader is the espresso.
No, I see. I can't really see
pee
it,
mug that every time the espresso has to take a leak to turn on and off.
Very nice.
It sort of like pisses on Darth Vader's head. Okay, cool. So yeah, all right. Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
I think the thing to know about Atmos, and there are people that I know and respect quite well who are doing a lot of Atmos stuff.
Yeah.
My good friend Eva Reistat, she's convinced to just mix music in headphones.
Okay, cool. And just learn how to do it for the Atmos.
Just do it in headphones for music. You don't need it for film and all that. I think that's absolutely positively a great idea. But I will say, and I'm just throwing this out, I think it's a great idea because I think she's right to some degree, because that is the final form. The only thing is maybe it's a little short-sighted in the fact of sometimes things we mix tend to be around for many, many years.
Right.
Maybe things will get better, but the music industry loves nothing more than to remix things.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it sounds like it's a format that's changing potentially over time. So, I mean, stereo, if you got the Atmos system in the future, you got to be able to listen to that stereo track too, or the mono track.
Yeah. So I think it's, and again, I think that she's pretty right on. I mean, if you really want your mix to translate to AirPods, mix it in AirPods,
right?
In Atmos,
right? You
can do it in headphones. I mean, you can do it super simple in Logic if you want to use Logic. I don't, but if you want to use Logic, it's super simple. Yeah. I mean, that's ground zero for everybody's Atmos delivery right there. Boom.
It's also ground zero for a lot of rock stars just creating music. A lot of most people I meet who are composing.
Well,
like I just taught
it's a great
class.
Compositional tool because it'll print scores and all that. I mean, there's a lot of great things about it. It's terrible in my opinion for mixing, but that's just me.
Well, I've struggled with the editing side of using it.
Oh yeah, okay.
But when I say composing, I mean just like if you're going to program beats and use synths and
brilliant.
It's really cool for that. And the nice thing about Logic is I see a lot in the student world. So because a school goes, oh, we just got to buy this once, and now we've got it for our students.
Yep.
I had the pleasure just this week of going up to Washington University, where I went to school before I decided to record, and I got to go teach 3 classes.
My nephew works there.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Hold it.
In St. Louis.
Yeah. What's the other big school there?
There's SLU, St. Louis University, and there's Webster, which has a recording program.
I think he is a Wash.
Yeah. But it was great because I felt like my interest in music was this distraction from what I was supposed to do. So it was really nice to come back 30 years later and be like, hey,
it worked.
Hey, it worked. Yeah. Okay, cool. So maybe talk about some of the stuff that's super fun for you about Atmos, decisions you're making about what to send where, and how do you think about some of these, whatever seems like it's fun to talk about. Have you found that you start having new homes for effects, or do you treat reverbs and delays differently, or anything interesting? Or what about low end? I've heard people talk about kick drums needing to go in more speakers than just left and right, up front.
Well, there's a lot to be said about that, actually, because of the limit, the level limit.
So does each bed seem to have like a narrower window of what you can send to it somehow when you say limit?
No.
Level limit?
No, the level limit is what you have to deliver, the level you have to deliver at.
Okay.
So the more, it seems to me like if you put all your low end up front, that level gets there sooner. Same thing with putting in the sub.
Right.
To be honest with you, the sub is kind of one of those things. It's just like 5.1. It's really fun. It's awesome. It's fun to do. Probably shouldn't do it unless, there's an explosion. But that doesn't mean I haven't put a little bit in.
Do you have explosions in record making?
I love making explosions. Yeah.
I like to kick my guitar amp.
Gunshots, explosions. Yeah, things like that are cool in music. No, it's kidding. Not at all. I don't know. Here's the thing I'm going to say is I think that if I was mixing a lot of like smartly programmed, cool pop music, I think Atmos would be a blast.
Right.
But that's not really what I do. I think when you have to deal with a rock band and you want to do, you want the kick drum to be really big, you do have to spread that low end around a bit to get it. The problem is that, there's no free lunch in it. Right. It's hard for me. The one thing about like mixing rock often is that carefully positioned and controlled dynamics. You take this big, huge dynamic pop pile of music and you jam it into these two speakers and it comes out and we go, wow, that's fucking cool sounding,
Right.
And in Atmos, you can't jam it together. If you jam it together, it doesn't sound spatial. And you'll get the old, this mix isn't spatial enough.
Right. That's a comment that people make.
Well, there have been records that none I know I have done, but there have been records that have been returned because, they were mixed in the bed total, and it was basically the stereo mix and some reverbs in the overs and surrounds. And they're like, nope, do it again. I tried. Good try. Didn't work. That being said, like I said, if like there's some of the stuff that I've listened to that I'm referencing in my room that is really great. Post Malone record is great. That Weekend record is great. There's a bunch of pop stuff that's really great. There's some sort of like new metal stuff that I've been listening to. None of it is great. And none of it's great because I feel like that, having the drums in front of you and the bass in front of you, and then a guitar out the left speaker and another guitar out the right speaker, and then the solos out the rear speaker, and then, and then the vocals sort of in this phantom somewhere in front of you. It just feels a bit sloppy and a little bit like a mess.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I will tell you, I think it's just for me having to mix and trying to make these decisions. And then I keep listening to the stereo and how it folds down. And I listen to the headphones, how it folds down. It's like, I can get it to sound really cool and super spatial. The stereo doesn't work at all.
Right.
Period. And then the binaural sort of works. But like, if I can get it sounding great, the Dolby binaural render in my headphones, my Focals, and then I go to the AirPod Pros or the AirPod Max, and it totally doesn't work. And it's just because the Dolby renderer and the Apple renderer are different. They're doing different things.
Well, I hope it gets figured out. I mean, just hearing it described and thinking about it, there's an expression in business, for example, that says if you try to market to everybody, you end up marketing to nobody. And probably that goes for anything else. If you try and be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to anybody.
Well, I mean, I think all your pretty much all your pop records, all that stuff is all being done in Atmos now.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, they do not know the difference. And some of those may actually be mixed in Atmos as the first mix.
Right. Or created there, maybe. And
then created there. And then they either do a remix of it in stereo or they're doing it. I don't know. I don't, the funny thing is about this is that, I did it for two reasons. One, I wanted to change my room, and I wanted to change speakers in there.
You just wanted to repaint the ceiling.
And I wanted to repaint the ceiling. Exactly. Because it was, covered in shit. No, just kidding. Yeah, believe me. No, I had to rebuild all my clouds. I never really wanted to ever take those down and take three separate clouds hanging separate and then bolt them together and then stick them above my console without moving the console. Right.
Yeah,
and then trying to get them level and in the right spot and square with chains hanging from hooks on studs. Yeah, no, I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah.
Because it sucked.
Yeah.
Picking up the 110s, which are like 200 and some pounds ish, and carrying them over my desk. Oof. And then carrying them behind the desk and putting them on the stands. And I mean, it's just no.
It's a good way to pull you back.
I can't even get behind my console now.
Yeah.
I can get behind one side, but I can't get behind the other side.
That's the way it used to be in here with my MCI desk. And it's one of the reasons why I felt like, I was glad to switch to something new.
Is that why you still have the creeper under your desk?
Oh, that guy? No, that's for I have he's pointing at a dolly, Rockstar. It's just a wooden dolly with four wheels on it. That's for my pedal board for the guitar so that I can just like scoot the pedal board out of the way and roll it back into place if I want. Mostly it was a clever idea. It's not getting used as much as it should, though. That's the thing, right? Yeah, there's a lot of clever ideas in the studio that maybe don't get used as much as we want.
I think all in all, the Atmos experience for me so far has been basically showing me that I need to do a lot more work in it to feel like I'm good at it.
Right.
I sort of feel like at this point that I'm sort of starting. I am starting, but I feel like I'm just a super mediocre beginner Atmos mixer.
Well, you've already made the jump and you're headed that way. Do you sometimes look at what we do in the studio? And, if I was to think of two examples off the top of my head, Steve Albini, for example, just decided I'm just going to stay on tape. I'm not going to worry about digital and all that stuff, even though it finds its way where it needs to. Chris Marr over at Welcome to 1979, he said, I'm going to do a studio that's going to really focus on this, particular style of recording. Do you sometimes feel like we're faced with decisions of, let me just stay expert at this particular thing and not worry about having to go in all the new directions?
I think it's a fool's game. I think if you decide and make decisions that you're going to work with just one format, or you're, I think you'll find that your clients,
they want more things.
No, I just find your clients will go elsewhere. Now, Albini is a little different deal because he's Steve Albini. He can do whatever Steve Albini wants to do. You know what I mean? He can do whatever he wants. If he says, I don't want to ever use Pro Tools, I'm just going to use tape. Okay, cool. There is a whole group of people who are just going to come to Steve Albini because they want Steve Albini's thing. Therefore, his whole approach at doing that totally 100% works.
Right.
I really can't speak for Chris, but I know that he has Pro Tools and they
Right. They have
studio.
everything available.
I know for a long time he said he wasn't going to do that. And I think that was pretty much it's in evidence that now he does have it, means that as a commercial studio, I just think you kind of have to do that. But if you're a producer and you're producing records yourself, in other words, like Chris as a producer, he can only use tape if he wants because he's the producer.
Right.
But as a commercial studio, which is what 1979 is, I think they have to have Pro Tools. They have to because, man, you start talking to bands, you're like, okay, look, a reel of tape is 30 minutes of recording, and it's $300 or $400 for nowadays, almost $400. Okay, it's $400. It's 30 minutes. At 15.
Right. And you guys have tape too. I mean, you're still using tape.
Yeah, I have an 827, right? Of course.
Yeah.
When you start talking about that, if a band came to me and they're like, we want to do our record on tape, we want to keep it on tape, I'd be like, all right, here's the deal. $8,000 for the tape budget.
Right.
That's 20 rolls.
Enough tape to record everything onto.
That's enough tape to get takes, keep takes, be able to edit between takes. Because, I mean, look, bands and people these days, they're not what it used to be.
Right.
And, it used to be that a lot of times the engineers were making really great performances out of a bunch of good performances.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By cutting, editing, I think it was Dave Thoner told me once that Jay Giles' band that had freeze frame on it, that there were 100 edits in the first minute of freeze frame of just the drum track.
That's awesome.
And see, they'd go in and record the song, then cut the drums up, right? Make another master of just the drums and then do all the overdubs on.
Yeah, I just did an interview with Bill Simzik, and he said that Hotel California had 33 edits in it.
Yeah.
To get to the drum part.
Yeah, of course.
And go from there.
But I mean, that's, so today, I think
so anybody who's worried about editing in Pro Tools and on your computer, don't sweat it.
Yeah, don't sweat it.
Do what you got to do, right?
Well, people used to have to do it, but the thing is, when people start saying, okay, $8,000 for that, what are you talking about? Okay, well, that's 20 reels. All right, let's make it 10. All right, are you guys cool with recording overtakes? You want to, okay, cool. Now we'll make it 5.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to just record it and then put it in the computer so we can edit it, okay, we're going to buy 3 reels.
Yeah.
And that's what ends up happening.
And that's what I always did too. Just have and then I was just like, I actually ended up just with 1 reel and I used it like crazy for 15 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't
And then I was like, am I ruining this again, man?
Yeah, at some point it does go wrong. But
I feel like you begin to know that when you try and align the machine and you can't get the alignment tones to sit right. Then the tape is just no good.
But think about this. I mean, there are bands. I mean, obviously talk about classic bands like the Beatles. They never recorded over anything in their life.
Right.
There are thousands of rolls.
Wow.
Of tape from them. And a lot of times, other things that people used to do. Richard Dodd, tell me about running a 1/4 inch constantly, while they're tracking. So in betweens, everything. And then like getting that deal where the vocalist, just out in the room while the tape wasn't rolling on the take, sings the perfect chorus part. Okay, well, that's on the 1/4 inch. So now we're going to fly that 1/4 inch into the chorus. And, there's no synchronization between this tape and that tape. So they just have to back it up and sort of get it.
Just hit play on the machine.
And hit play and just try to get it, a little bit of hunt and peck to get it. Okay, if I start this machine, when I see this mark, I start this machine and they're going to be really close.
Yeah.
And then just do that a few times till you get it right. And those are all the things. Those techniques are completely lost to us.
Yeah.
Because they just don't happen.
Speaking of other things that may or may not be disappearing, do you find yourself missing just kind of the era of component stereos and assembling?
What's funny is I just helped assemble a stereo for the Stapletons which was great because, you know, it wasn't my wallet.
Right.
You know, but I have been jonesing hard for a set of my original speakers that I owned.
What were those?
Boston Acoustic A100s. I had 60s initially, and then I had A100s. 60s are like a bookshelf. That's a nice speaker. It's about like this.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea where mine went, by the way. They just disappeared somewhere.
Well, if you're listening, old roommates, give them back.
But A100s were floor speakers. They're about this high, about 2.5 feet or something.
Yeah.
That and I really would love to have a Marantz 2275. And then, good turntable. I do have a Marantz. I have a really nice Marantz glass plinth turntable. And I want that for a room that 100% totally has no room for it. I'd really love.
You're talking about in your control room?
No, at my house. I'd really love to have a set of B&W like 803s, or B&Ws. I should.
Listening room would this be? Do you have?
This is my den,
listening?
our
right,
little mermaid lounge in the basement. Yeah, but it has no room for any of those speakers. There's no room for it. There's no room for any of that. There's a big, huge bookcase.
I want to have a listening room.
A60s would work in there, but I don't think they'd last very long in there.
If you had a dedicated listening room in a house and you could make it what you want, how big of a room do you think do you visualize?
Just a living room.
Just a living room size.
Yeah, about the size of this room, probably.
Yeah.
Whatever this is.
This is, I think,
15
if I remember,
20.
this is like, 15, 18, 8 or 7. I think it's about 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
Like
so standard living room height.
Yeah.
And it's 18 feet deep.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe like 12 to 13
my
across.
control room is 19 by 23. So on purpose, stupid, 19, prime number by a non-prime number, even though it is a prime number, sort of.
The shape of this control room I chose on purpose, just really going through the books and they talked about golden ratios and so I tried to use that.
Yeah.
And not to get into those weeds, rock stars, but essentially the ratios of height, width, and length, if you spread them out just so, it kind of spreads out all the nodes.
432.
432?
Isn't that right? 432?
Maybe, yeah. Or that's math class, 432 triangle or something.
Well, that's the
something like a 345
or 135. It's 432 or something. Whatever it is, it's the size of the monolith in 2001.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, so just go watch the movie Rockstars.
Yeah,
and just make
whatever it is, that's the monolith is the golden parameter. Whatever it is, whatever.
Hey rock stars, are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble getting your mixes to sound great? Do they sound kind of weak or distant or lack punch or clarity? Well, I've got a gift to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot closer to professional mixes. And it's my free introductory course called Mix Master Bundle. This course shows you how to get pro sound with your mixes from your home studio using free plugins and Pro Tools. And the best part is that these fundamental mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus, Studio One, Reaper, or whatever you're using. If you're ready to make your best record ever, then go to mixmasterbundle.com and get started now for free. And you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. I feel like I'd love to have a listening room in the house and just sit and listen to music, but truthfully, if I do anything, I should just make myself listen to music more on my studio speakers. That's the thing that I always felt remiss about. I spend a lot of time listening while I'm creating, but remembering to just listen to records and listen to music there. So I'm training my ear. Is that part of your routine still, or do you just...
I approve all of our vinyl. I'm old school and stupid. I'm still making records to go to vinyl. Period.
Yeah.
I could give a shit less where it goes elsewhere. Vinyl's all I really care about.
Yeah.
And look, there's a lot of dumb reasons for this. Most of what I do, minus Chris Stapleton, minus those, few major label or a couple major label acts I do every 10 years. You know, all the indie bands and a whole bunch of them that I could name off that I've done in the last 3 or 4 years, all their money is being made from touring,
Right.
merchandise sales, and vinyl album sales.
Yeah.
Because vinyl album sale, $20 record has about maybe $7 to $11 of profit in it. And that's post paying back the recording. So, but if you go to Europe, suddenly that $20 record is a €30 record, which sometimes can be good, or a €40 record. And if you're on a tour with somebody, I used to work with a band that's now defunct, but they were called the Ben Miller Band. They're from my hometown. They were great. And
Glenn Miller's younger brother.
Yeah. Ben Miller. Yeah. Glenn Miller's younger brother or younger. Yeah. Son he never had. But they were kind of a sort of a banjo-esque slide guitar, washtub bass, best washtub bass player I've ever worked with ever. Scott Leeper. He's awesome. Made it himself with a weed eater string and pulled. I mean, would do full runs, boom, 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 boom.
That's great.
With a broom handle on the edge of the wash tub and a weed eater string.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And a little screw eye in the center of the wash tub bottom or something, right?
Well, no, he had the weed eater string went through the wash tub and he had a plate on the bottom that had a piezo in it.
Oh wow! So that was the pickup,
and then that went to an amp.
Oh, that's clever.
And then the amp drove a rumble chair so he could feel the note.
That's awesome.
In his spine,
pitch and everything. Yeah.
And then they had a multi-instrumentalist that played mandolin, drums, washboard, trumpet, and trombone. And I have seen him play trombone, washboard, and drums at the same time.
Wow.
Or trumpet.
I came home one summer and made a washtub bass because I had seen one, and it was fun as shit to make it and really hard to play.
Yeah. He would drill a hole in the broom handle and put the weed eater string through it and tie it and then melt it. And then that would go down through the bottom and he would tie it and melt it. And then the broom handle had a V cut in the bottom that sat on the edge of the wash tub that provided the pitch forward or back. So if you bent it, if you pulled towards him, it would tighten the string.
So it was always that way. It was never sliding up and down.
No. He was literally move it forward. It goes low, back towards him. It pulls it tight.
And weed eater. So that's pretty small.
It's not big. Big weed eater. It's like a 109 big weed eater string.
So I think I made mine out of laundry line.
Oh yeah, no, this was big plastic monofilament line, and then he had to play. He used something on his finger to because otherwise the string would tear his finger up. Yeah, and it wasn't like the star string; it was just round, you know? Right. But he would boom, 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 just walk bass like crazy with that thing. That's amazing. But that band, they opened for ZZ Top, and Billy loved them, and so they went out and toured in Europe with ZZ multiple times. I mean, like for multiple years, and every time they go over there, they had to match ZZ Top's merch sales. So their first record, they paid me for their first record in a backpack full of cash for their first record. It felt like a drug deal. And it wasn't a lot of money. So we're not talking about a lot of money, but it was just a roll of bills as 100 with a rubber band around it. These big rolls of 1s and 5s, basically. Awesome. And it was all from their merch sales. We made the record, and then they printed up a couple thousand, went to Europe, and basically sold like 8 or 12,000 of these over the course of a few tours.
These are the vinyl records.
Vinyl record at $40, 40 euros.
Yeah.
So, they made their money back.
So I have an intern who was here who made his record and printed it on vinyl, and he told me that he was driving, Uber and Lyft around town, and every time he would go out to drive for a shift, he'd just grab about 4 records and stick them between the front seats. And he sold out of them on every drive because people were just curious and they'd want to buy the record from their driver. I thought that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only way really. I mean, people can only make records. People can only really make money now on vinyl sales for selling their record.
Yeah.
Vinyl sales, CDs, whatever. But buy the vinyl. It has a download card. You get a download card. You can put it in your, whatever. And then it gets tracked. So, get it to all the, what do they call them? The ISPs or whatever it is.
Right.
Get them to all the services, get them to Tidal, get them to, Spotify, get it to everybody. And then, hopefully you get a song on a playlist or something. But, I did a Melissa Etheridge record a few years back for Concord, big label. I mixed it. And until last year, my streaming for, I would say easily, that would have been, that was one of the first things we did on the SSL. So that would have been 17, right? Maybe 17, 16, 17, something like that. Until last year, I had made a whopping 8 cents off the entire album from streaming.
Wow.
8 cents. So my one mix point on 15 songs, 8 cents. But a song off that record got a placement in either in a film or in something, and my agreement had that. So then it went up to $40.
Good Lord. And are there ways to structure deals with vinyl that can be better for a producer or a mixer?
It's a little weird because you're at the, it becomes a trust thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But look, a lot of what I don't really need. I mean, if I'm cool with the band just making records and I don't really need a point of all that. I mean, if they want to figure out the math and do the math, talk, my manager will figure that out with them. But if not, but streaming has all of the delivery mechanisms, the, letter of direction and all that stuff. I'll just take that. Let's just hope something happens.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to I don't want a piece of their merchandise. I don't want a piece of their shows. Right. I'm not a, greedy major label doing 360 deals.
Yeah.
There's no need for that.
The thing that strikes me about vinyl is I thought about this year going home and like seeing, a family house has been around for a while and you see artwork on the walls and artwork sort of gets handed down from generation to generation. You might have a piece of artwork that your grandparents painted or something like that. And I was thinking about what we do in music. And I was like, well, how would my grandkids know that I even created music? And I guess you can certainly hand songs down. People can learn songs from each other and they do, but vinyl records seems like one of those places where it's really a physical thing that people keep on a shelf and they'll keep it, Yeah. If
vinyl has another thing that a lot of people don't take for granted. And that is vinyl allows for our expectations, for better or for worse, to be reset. Now, what does that equate to? Well, the reason we had the whole loudness war is because people started listening to songs one after the other on the radio or whatever.
Right.
And so, that Red Hot Chili Peppers song that started all this shit or whatever, it started long before that in radio, but like the, Californication that turned all the radio stations down on an iPod sounded great. And then the next song was quieter.
Yeah.
And A&R people and record labels couldn't let that virtual sorry, I hope it's not misogynistic, but that whole, wow, their dick is bigger than mine. We can't have that. And so then it turns into Death Magnetic or whatever, we go to all the way to over there. But vinyl allows the brain this really cool deal. When you put the record on and you play it and you listen, you don't have anything at all to compare it to except for silence. And then you hear side one, and then you stop, and then you flip it over. And in that period of time, your brain resets. Your brain resets to another reality. And that reality is, oh, okay, well, that's music. It's not silence. And then that record ends, and you get up, and you go over, and then you get in your box of records or whatever, and you go, oh, I want to listen to whatever this is. You put that on. In that period of time, your brain has completely forgot how loud it is. It's forgot what it sounded like. You forgot all of it.
Yeah.
So when you hit play or you drop the needle, and then you go back over and you go back to doing whatever it was you're doing. So most people don't just sit down and listen to records, except for audiophiles who are usually crazy, and talk about things that, nobody recorded that they hear in there, but that's totally fine.
Or doctors.
You know what I mean?
Doctors and dentists.
Doctors and lawyers. Yeah.
Right.
Hi-fi lawyers.
Yeah.
Exactly. But their whole reason for being that is that they can invest themselves into something that brings them joy. And the reality is the music brings them joy. I have the Third Man re-release of the Paramount box set. Now, I have it on vinyl and I have the CD and I have the record and it pops up and sometimes I'll just do a pure random playlist of my stuff. It pops up. Those records, are all from Lacquer Shellacs. They're noisy as can be. They got pops, they got cracks. They're loud as can be, and they are clear as a bell. Every one of those vocals are just clear as can be. And then I'll hear something from last year, and it's like, wow, that's pretty quiet. Well, why is it? Well, there's a lot of low end, there's
right
compression, there's whatever. If they're played one right after the other, your brain will freak out a bit, but not if you go and just put the record on, listen, take the record off, put another record on. Your brain will reset.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I'm mixing, I'll listen loud, pretty loud enough my watch tells me to turn it down, 90 dB or so. And then I'll do that. I'll kind of get the mix where I like it, and then I will stop and I will go get a coffee or pee or whatever we have to do for 5 to 7 minutes. And then I'll come back and I will never listen at that level again. I'll change speakers. I'll go to my other speakers and I'll never go back to those speakers again until I get to the end when I'm printing. And that's because I just figured out that resetting my brain and resetting that concept of comparison. The great quote, right? Comparison is the thief of joy.
No,
yeah,
great.
It's a really good quote. And it's funny because that's like saying, great is the enemy of good.
Right.
It's
better
is the enemy of great.
Yeah.
How many times has a guitar player wanted to play a better solo? And back in the day when he had tape, fucked it up.
When I'm comping vocals,
time.
when I'm comping vocals and I'm comparing, I just put my joy on hold until after I can play back the whole finished.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, yeah, and then, yeah, and then depending on, I mean, I did a record with Jewel once, and we did like 75 takes of a chorus. And it was stupid, and she was like, what do you think? I'm like, I like the first one. She's like, play it for me. So I did. She goes, you're right. That's really good. Cool.
Yeah. Back when I used to record with Living Things, I think we did 150 vocal tracks. I had a comp between them. It was
That was back
nearly
in the days
impossible.
too, when you couldn't tab between the
No, I
tab
had to
and
invent my own way. I had to come up with a script where I'd go to the track and I'd go to the next playlist and the next, and then I use the undo and redo to quickly.
Here's the question. Did it actually make it better?
I have no idea.
Well, I mean, how do you feel about it now?
I never want to do it again.
But I mean, how do you feel how do you feel about the record?
I haven't listened to it in ages.
Was it worth it?
It probably helped, but I don't know if it was great. It probably was. We probably picked the better version of things here and there, but I don't think it's worth it. The way I like to make music is I like to go in and work as fast as possible.
Yeah,
and then,
that's the Jack White thing. That's what Jack does.
And
sometimes
there's so much more to be gained in inspiration.
99% of the time, it's best.
Yeah.
There's every now and then there's the 1 or 2% where I've seen back in my time with Jack was like, hold it. Let's just let me get this sound cool. And we wouldn't do it. We'd push through.
Yeah.
And then we're on 8-track.
Make it work.
We're on 8-track tape, no Pro Tools. Sort of. There you go.
Vocals is a place where it gets tricky for me because I don't usually have another set of ears on the other side of the glass telling me if I got it or not. So I'm just.
Well, I'm sort of the same deal. I mean, I'm producing a lot, so I will usually try my best to put the singer next to me. And I'll be like, I like this, and they'll go, yeah, maybe there's a better one. Okay, cool. So then we go listen. And, I'll use the playlist feature in Pro Tools to build the playlist thing. And I'll literally I'll cut something in the third playlist down, play track 3 or whatever, or take 3. And I will use that as a marker. That's the one we like. And then we'll try to beat that one, But, comping is not exactly the most fun thing. And, I'm blessed to recording a guy like Stapleton who sings it and plays it, and they sing it and play it once, but they don't play it once, but they play it a few times, and then they know they have the take, and then we just kind of move on to the next thing, But he and Morgan, they are perfectionists. They don't, we'll go down rabbit holes, and we'll work on a song for 2 or 3 hours to make sure that it's right. But it usually is always right. Or it gets kicked off the island.
Atom Audio introduces the all-new A-Series line of monitors, featuring the XART accelerated ribbon tweeter design, built-in DSP-based room correction, and speaker voicings, allowing you to customize your Atom Audio monitors to fit your control room. The A-Series will rock in any studio. Small studio spaces or immersive multi-speaker configurations are perfect for the A4V or the new A7V, the next generation of the incredibly popular A7X. Mid-sized rooms and narrow spaces will love the low profile of the A44H, expanding on the A7V sound, or the A77H, a true 3-way midfield monitor delivering rich, spacious sound. And bigger studios will love the A8H, a 3-way speaker and the pinnacle of the A-Series that delivers extremely accurate sound required for critical listening environments. Get the Atom Audio monitors and subwoofers that are right for your studio with an extended 5-year warranty at atomaudio.com. Every studio needs a good vintage mic for that classic warm sound. Whether you're looking for those airy highs, sweet mid-range, or silky low-end, a good vintage mic can put the magic in your mixes. So it's no wonder vintage mics have been loved and praised by thousands of engineers for decades. The JZ Microphone Vintage Series are built by hand in Latvia, using only the best electronic components, and feature the patented Golden Drop capsule design for great detail detail and richness of tone that will bring that classic vintage vibe to your studio and be a real workhorse for your sessions. This time, our friends at Jay-Z Microphones have come up with a special offer just for you, rock stars. Use the coupon ROCKSTAR to get 40% off the Vintage Series mics V67, V47, or V12, the mic you're hearing right now. Plus, they'll throw in a free shock mount worth $120 for a limited time at jzmic.com. Hey, Rockstars, we're back now. We got a bunch of great questions from you for Vance. So let's just jump in and we'll answer some questions. What do you think? All right, so let's see. So this one comes in from Ross Justice. These all came in through our Facebook group, Rockstars. If you want to join that, just go to Facebook, search Recording Studio Rockstars. Make sure you answer the 3 questions when you apply, and we'll let you into the group. And you can do this kind of stuff. It's awesome. But Ross Justice says, ask about the routing back into your desk from the template that you talked about way back on the show. And regarding that template, is there a particular reason you chose not to route the transient designer into the drum bus? And he also said, he's the greatest. That means you, Ross.
Oh, wow. Vance. Well, thank you. Thank you. My family thinks so, but, well, some people in my family think so.
Vance is comfortably reclined on the nicer couch in the studio.
I stretched out here on the couch. It's pretty nice.
You're making me feel like that was a good idea to have that couch.
It's a good idea. This couch is it's a nice couch. Okay. How does it route? So my template, my Pro Tools template, well, like I said, it works pretty much exactly the same. The 33609 Fatso only goes to the stereo bus. It is not in the drum bus, because that would basically, the drum bus is those 36609s, but because it's in parallel, the drums also go to stereo. So that's how I want it. Transient designer going back into the stereo bus is really kind of the only way it does work, because otherwise you'd be compressing something that you're compressing or doing whatever you're doing.
Like undoing your transient.
Yeah, you're kind of undoing it. So as far as the guitar bus or the band bus and then the vocal bus, it's all the same. The stereo bus is where we start and then everything else. So on my desk, buses 25 and 26 is the 33609, 27, 28 is Fatso, 27, 28. Yes, yeah, hold it. Yeah, 26, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 are my band 33609, and 3132 is the vocal bus. And then it's what's funny, the transit designer is 5 and 6. I have 2 of them. And then 7 is my Opticon. 8 currently is open, but in the past it has been an Aphex oral exciter. Just at the moment, I'm just not using it. 9 and 10 are my Unfairchild. 11 and 12 is this Gemini gain rider, level rider, or something like that. It's this really cool old ADR, kind of Compex Helios-like limiter that I just or compressor that I have in limit. And it ends up being kind of like a cool exciter and limiter for like percussion, things like that. And then 13 and 14 is bass. 13 is the DBX subsynth. 14 is the stay level. 15 and 16 is this weird Richard Dodd box that Richard loaned me years ago called the Mojo Tone or the Motone. I don't know anything about it. I know that when you put things into it, what comes out is cooler. That's all I know.
Nice.
It has a knob, but that knob is just really kind of a tone control. And that tone control ends up being a little bit of sometimes I'll want it a little brighter. I want guitars a little brighter, and I'll use it on that brighter. Sometimes I want them really woolly. I'll turn it down. But it's a very cool box. I don't know what it does. And then 16 and 17 is my H3000. 19 and 20 is my H910. 21, 22 are my 42s. Those are malted off of 21. It's a mono send stereo return into 21, 22. 23, 24 is my bass unit, the Bedini Audio Spatial Expander. And then obviously we're back to 25, 26.
And so, Roxo, just a reminder, we're talking about the SSL
It's
console.
my SSL, which is a 32 bus desk, and I use all 32 buses to return things back. Some of those are effects, some of them are parallel buses.
And you're starting in Pro Tools, you have a way of breaking it out to the console, and then those buses are sending it to these
but
other
all
pieces
those
of gear
things
as well.
that I just told you, those are not Pro Tools buses. All
Right,
those are real
analog.
gear. That's
Yeah.
analog gear.
Yeah.
You could do exactly the same thing in Pro Tools by just returning those at one end of the desk or the other.
And then you can just choose to send something to any one of those buses.
Absolutely.
As you're going.
And I usually, in all my Pro Tools sessions, I only set up 32 buses so that everything is basically tied to an input of my console or something. So, yeah.
Okay. And if I recall this correctly, so first question is, and then are you often sending something to more than one place?
Often.
Okay. So it might be a little
That's
bit of
where
this, a little bit of that.
that's where the fun starts.
Yeah.
That's where the chaos happens.
Yeah. And if we set up stuff, do we want to really make sure that we have, if we're going to send something to 5 places, we're not going to send the same level to all 5 places. We want to probably set up.
Yes, we're going to send the same level.
Oh, we are. Okay. So we don't need 5 level adjustments.
No, we don't want that.
All right, great.
Because I'll start with the mix first on the desk without any of that stuff.
Okay.
So that mix, I want, like that drum mix, I want to go to the parallels. Different people have different ways of working.
Yeah.
If you're working purely in Pro Tools, you just do that by using the command key.
Copy, mix to.
Well, no. You don't use an aux. You use the mult.
Right. Yeah. For some reason, I've had that work sometimes and not work other times. I think that's called Pro Tools.
Different version of Pro Tools. And depending on how, like, you can't put a master fader on one of those. Can't do that. It'll be out of time. And back in the day, a lot of times if you did that, and then you had an aux with sending that to that also, that would screw it up.
There was also a thing, I think maybe it was Ross who had asked this earlier about, he was a little confused, if I remember right, about how things were, you had more different returns or something. And I was trying to say that I was guessing you probably, a console usually has, you can choose different tape machine returns and listen to different things.
My console is an inline desk. So my console has 2 line inputs and a tape input.
Right.
Which is an interesting distinction. On an SSL, a normal SSL that has mic pre's, the second input is the mic pre input for the channel. Now that channel path will now go down through the compressor, go through EQ. You can move the compressor before the EQ or after the compressor. You can move the insert before the EQ or after the EQ. Mm-hmm. Before the EQ or after the insert. You can move all that stuff. Then it goes to the fader. And then the fader goes to the buses.
Right.
The buses go to tape machine. Tape machine comes back in the tape input to the small fader. Now, on the patch bay, the small fader is malted. That tape return is malted to line in, which is the other input on the console.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's in record mode. In mix mode, the way the SSL worked was the input changed from the second input to the first input, which is the line input. I know that I said that backwards. The mic pre is the second input. It switches to the first input, and now in mix mode, the line input comes in, hits that that first line in.
The big fader or whatever.
And then goes to the big fader.
Yeah.
But I don't ever use my desk that way, because what also happens at that point is the small fader has just the same tape input.
Right.
And the big fader can't go to any buses. And I don't want to do that. So I actually mix in what's called replay, which is basically just record, but in a mode that allows me to use the studio monitor speakers for like a room, to put a mic out there and blast stuff through my studio monitors, and a couple other little things. And then I have to do an input flip. So I flip the input from what would be the mic pre in record mode to line input. Now, that doesn't take the tape off of the small fader at all. But now the small fader can be an input from one of my outboard parallel buses. Let's just say number 9. So bus 9 is now fed from the big fader. And I can also get the stereo there, because the busing on the SSL, the buses, all their buses and stereo are all patched.
You can hit stereo.
You can hit them. But in mix, you only have a choice of, on my desk, A, B, or C buses. You don't have any of the 32 channel buses. So, but in record, you do. But it's exactly the same path. It just allows me to have those buses.
Now, so you got 32 faders on the board, 32
I have
big
48
faders,
but yeah.
Or 48. And then
I have 48 return faders.
Right. So you can actually have twice as many faders for mixing that way.
Yeah, I have 96.
Yeah. So I thought.
So like 7 and 8, or 9 and 10 go out to my Unfairchild. They come back in the small fader 9 and 10. And then that can go to bus A, B, or C. So I'm using B. B is my normal stereo bus, has the API summing and all that.
Yeah. And then I guess the other part that maybe Ross was asking me about earlier was when you have a heater mix and you have the mix, how are you doing that? I think it's just at the master section, you can switch which one you're listening to on the speakers.
Yeah. They can come back different outputs of my.
And would you listen to the heater mix? Would you turn it on? That's going to be louder than the other mix.
I turn it down
the
7.
Speaker down,
because I gain it up 7 to hit the limiter. That's my gain. So basically, the heated mix is just me making it a little bit louder so that it, somewhat makes sense in people's car.
Right.
But I'm not trying to master it. So I just turn it up 7 dB. And so I just turn the fader down 7 dB.
Right. So that when you flip between them, they sound the same volume.
They sound the
mix
same
and
volume.
The heater volume.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's see here. Let's move on to this one comes in from Jones Nelson. Jones says, what magic dust did he sprinkle on Chris Stapleton's microphone to get that amazing sound?
It's not one microphone.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a magic dust of microphones.
It's 2 microphones. Yeah.
Tell us about that if you
want.
It's
a 4038 Coles and a U47. And I took a picture of it the other day that I will send to our good friend Ledge here.
Sweet.
Right now.
Hopefully we all get to hear my dog Daisy barking outside
okay,
the studio.
That's all right.
I think it means I forgot to close the control room door all the way. But
that's all right. So I came upon this during Traveler because Chris didn't exactly like the sound of the U47 we had picked out. He liked it, but he thought it was just a little too bright for him, but it sounded great. So what we did was we put the Coles up. It requires a fair amount of mic stand magic that really can only kind of be done with latch lake parts. So it's a latch lake stand, and then one of the latch lakes that bolts, like has a little side arm
to bolt onto that.
Yeah, bolts onto the other one, and you tighten it down really tight. And then I used the 4038, and I just put the little bag over it, put it up so it's exactly equal and exactly in the center of the U47's capsule. so the ribbon and the thing are both on the same plane, and get it as close as possible. Then I tighten it all down, pull the bag out, and it stays about an eighth to a 16th of an inch apart.
So
because it's magnetic, pull together.
Let me add to that, because Rockstars, if you've ever a 4038 is a giant magnet, and if you put it near anything, it just sucks the mic right up against the other thing, and the stand can't hold it. So that's your way of tightening it super well, and that bag's the spacer.
The bag's a spacer to begin with, and then that microphone goes. Both of those microphones, the 4038 and U47. And on the last record and this record, the current record we're working on, those are both my microphones.
And the mics are side by side.
They're side by side.
It's just a U47. Where does he sing? Does he sing? Does he feel like he has to think about which mic he's singing towards, or
absolutely not? Because he's never close.
Okay.
He's usually a foot away or more. He plays guitar pretty much every time he sings. And sometimes it's guitar and acoustic guitar.
Is the 47 in figure 8 as well?
No, it's not in figure 8.
Okay.
It's not. So those two mics go to a pair of 1073s. And then that goes through a Fairchild or my Unfairchild, either one. And then that goes to Pro Tools on a stereo track.
And the Unfairchild, that's Eric Valentine's?
Eric Valentine's, yes. And we record on a stereo track in mono. And that is the deal. Maybe a little bit of EQ on the 1073, a little bit of top end on the Coles, just a little bit to kind of, on that 10K, 1073 thing.
So just in case we made anybody's brain explode, when you say we record onto a stereo track in mono, that means the track is stereo, but you just pan the left and right to the center, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you adjust the blend of the two at the gain stage
as you record it.
Yes. So that hopefully you won't have to do any more adjusting. But you got that ability if you want to.
Yeah. In Pro Tools, you can use the down mix plugin, which anytime we do something for other people, now we did a track for the Dell a ways back. And what we did was we worked through the whole track. And then instead of sending them the stereo, I used down mix and committed it.
Okay, you just do the commit feature in Pro Tools, and there you go.
And I made a mono track.
That's great. I've explored double miking stuff in the past, but it's
and
good to hear you talk about it.
I double mic every guitar, every electric guitar. I double mic.
Well, let's go there next.
Sure.
You talked about Chris's quintuple mic.
Yeah,
once.
the 4
or the quad.
Yeah, four, which is me double miking in sort of a stereo
I did
thing.
that on my record, which I'm finishing now.
You dig it?
I did it. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But now I'm layering all the other guitars that didn't do that, so I'll hide it. And I'll make sure it's hidden in the mix.
But yeah, that was an interesting thing because what sort of ended up happening since we did that record, which was the second record, was that he sort of spread his amps out. So he's got a little more amps now. And so what ends up happening, if you put that whole thing together on one amp, inevitably he's like, hey, let's try the super. And then it's like, I got to move this whole 4 mic catastrophe over and then reposition it because the speakers are never in the same spot. And everybody kind of gets a little like,
gets a little old,
so right? Really need all those speakers, I need all those mics. But I do always record 2 sets of microphones for him. In other words, I have 2 identical sets of mics. It's a 67 and a 57. 67, 57. There'll be guitar 1, guitar 2. So this current record, he had another amp, which actually was amazing sounding. And then he had his Princeton. And so we just left guitar 1 on the Princeton, and guitar 2 was this other amp. We probably have 4 songs with that other amp. So those are on channels 17, 18 is guitar 1, and 19 and 20 is the other one.
Nice. And then the
pretty much
U67?
Flat, no. So there's a trick with the 67, no pad.
No pad, that's what I was going to ask.
And then you
next.
come in the line input of the 1073.
So if you got enough headroom on your preamp,
which nobody does unless you're going the line input.
Right. All right.
But the line input works. It's great. If you have an API, you're screwed.
What about mic placement on 67 and 57?
They're side by side, as close as they could possibly be. And then on the cone, if you were to draw a circle from the center, go all the way out to the edge, but not onto the surround.
Right.
But just right inside the surround, right on the edge.
Okay, which is similar to the four miking technique. You did that same
Exactly
edge
the same.
position for
Exactly the same.
Now, do you feel like that placement is a placement that works great for Chris's tone?
I think it works great for every guitar.
All right, great.
Yeah, it's kind of my sort of thing.
Awesome.
So,
and I feel like, one of my questions I like to ask about, or I want to ask about guitars is trying to do rock records and not having them sound harsh when I get things up there. And it seems like that might be part of the solution on guitar tones is, does that remove, I mean, like when you get close to the center of the cone, you get all this high frequency.
Yeah, I don't like it there.
Yeah.
The best thing that you can do is, like I have done this quite a few times, not recently, but like sort of, if you've got a band that's just drums and guitar, you usually have to record a low amp. Like take the guitar, split it, go through a bass amp, take all the top end off, and then blend that into the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing you can do is do the side mic thing, like what I'm talking about, and then put an RE20 in the middle of the cone and just roll everything over 300 off.
And just create a bass tone.
Make a big, and because that's where all the low end for the speaker is in the middle of that cone.
Yeah, because moving the most air there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
the speaker is
awesome.
moving the most there.
Yeah.
Out on the edge, it's not quite moving so much.
OWC is your one-stop shop for flexible drive storage and connectivity solutions for your studio. The Mini Stack STX for your Mac Mini adds 2 additional drives over a universal SATA HDD SSD bay and an NVMe M.2 PCIe SSD slot, plus 3 additional Thunderbolt USB-C ports. Or the OWC Thunderbay 4 chassis, built like a tank, gives you 4 hot swappable 2.5-inch RAID configurable drive bays, plus an extra Thunderbolt 3 jack for daisy chaining up to 5 devices. Or check out the OWC Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock with 2 RAID configurable drives and 7 ports of connectivity, including a front-side SD card reader, 1 gig Ethernet, 2 USB 3.2 ports, and a dedicated display port, plus an additional backward-compatible Thunderbolt port. Get your studio connected with the Mini Stack STX, Thunderbay 4, and Gemini Thunderbolt 3 dock at macsales.com/rockstars. Use the custom link in our show notes because it's a great way for you to help support this podcast. So thanks, Rockstars. Attention, all rock stars! iZotope has got you covered. With RX, Ozone, Neoverb, Nectar, and Vocal Synth, you'll have a collection of powerful apps and plugins that will help you get a professional sound in no time. Whether you're looking to clean up your vocal recordings with RX, master your tracks with Ozone, or add depth and ambience to your mixes with Neoverb, iZotope is your magic wand for awesomeness. Plus, with Nectar and Vocal Synth, you can easily add creative effects and unique textures to your vocals and instruments, from subtle mix enhancements to extreme sound design. iZotope takes your music and podcasts to the next level. Go to iZotope.com/rockstars and use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off any plugin purchase. How often would you record a guitar tone that you would describe as being kind of heavy metal? And would you still feel similar?
Yeah, do exactly the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can do different things. Sometimes with those kind of guitars, like if you're doing I did the Clutch record. We did the same exact miking, but sometimes had a room mic involved. And I had 2 setups, and one was a 6757 and the other was a 67 BK5A, which is kind of a different sound.
Yeah, I know. I think mine's in the maintenance drawer right now. I'm not sure if it's working.
Yeah, I think mine took a drop.
Jack White, Lazaretto.
He did half of Lazarus.
Okay. All right. I've always,
but I did, The Culprit, which I love. I Want You to Fight for My Love, which I love. I think I found The Culprit is actually, there's 5 songs in there that I recorded.
Yeah. I mean, I've always really appreciated the bold tones, the bold guitar tones and all that stuff. Really great fuzz tones that are like right up in your face. And
the second Dead Weather record to me is, well, that record was the hardest record I've ever done, technically, by far. But some of the guitar sounds on that record are some of my favorite guitar sounds I've ever done. Some of the guitar sounds on the record I didn't do. They were the original demo, which was John Hampton before he passed.
Would those all be 4038s for Mike's?
No, they would have been 67s or 57s. Usually we always had a 67 for Jack's guitar.
John Hampton, was he Ardent?
Ardent, yeah. Yeah, Jack called me about doing some recording with them, some demos, and I was stuck over Blackbird doing a incredibly dumb 5-1 for a band that shan't be named. Huge rock band from Nashville. You can figure out the rest of it.
Nice. The Sheepdogs, Future Nostalgia.
I love that record.
Really, really great.
Matt Ross-Bang recorded that. He did that up at a cabin in Canada on Radar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So was that a mixed project for you?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk a little bit about, like, there's this wonderful separation of elements in there. I can really hear each instrument. It reminds me of like a Beatles album in a way. But at the same time, it's all glued together just right and rocks. Cool. So
that was actually done on my old desk. It was done on my that record probably is the record that made me buy the SSL. That one and the Revivalist record, Man Against the Mountains, because I could not recall anything. I couldn't recall a mix to save my life. It just fucking wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons, but the desk sounded brilliant. It was this big 32 channel Soundcraft that I bought from Dan Rudin, who bought it from a guy whose name I forgot, that it was a Nashville guy, passed away, but he bought it from Hans Zimmer.
Oh wow!
So it's like the Lion King board.
What kind of Soundcraft?
It was a Soundcraft 3200.
3200.
It was huge. It was 48 by 32 by 32 by 8.
Back when you used to get your 10,000 steps just moving to the kick drum fader and back up to the vocal.
14 feet, 4 inches long before you got to the patch bay.
The acoustic guitar on that one, it's like really in your face, but it's not harsh and bright.
We were trying to go for, one of the cool things about that is that the singer Ewan had a really great idea of what he wanted the record to sound like. And so he would be like maybe the vocal, like take all the top end off. So like a lot of the vocals on the record are like way bandpassed. Like there's nothing over 4K on any of them.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is, and then down low, like maybe nothing under 300, so like what happens is the vocal is very clear. And so we did a lot of that sort of like, okay, so the vocal's happening here. This guitar over here needs some 1K 6, like that, Rolling Stones, acoustic guitar on like Exile.
Right,
and then this other one is going to be really, really pretty, so like one's kind of clanging and the other's going sling. And I think there's a lot of that on that record.
Yeah.
And some of it was, some of it came from Matt, who was there for it. Some of it came from the band. Some of it came from me. All of it was an amazing, really great. The shame is it's a record that nobody knows because it just didn't really do anything. The record they did before was done by Pat Carney and mixed by Chad Blake. and it had like a single and, whatever. I think it's a great record. That's a great record. And I like Pat. And of course, Chad is, one of my heroes. But it kind of sounds like the Black Keys.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only bummer is it's like, kind of sounds like the Black Keys sort of, which is fine. Except there's already a band called the Black Keys. You know what I mean? But that record, Sheepdog, that Future Nostalgia doesn't sound like anybody but them at that moment.
Yeah. It's very cool. And I mean, you answered my question was like, do you find yourself rolling off highs? I said drums and guitars, but I think everything. And, the extension of that is, do we have too much high end in our records from our home studio condenser mics, or maybe we just think, we got this mic, we put it on everything.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. We might because of the digital recording world. That's why I'm a big, huge fan of the Burls. I really love the way I love the way that transformer saturates and sort of tames a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And converters have gotten better and better and better over the years. But the thing we didn't have to ever really do at tape, even though we had like very linear out to close to 20K. I mean, I never knew anybody that ever aligned a tape machine with a 20K tone.
Right.
I mean, 15K was sort of like, okay, maybe. So, I mean,
I think I always used 10.
Well, yeah, we'd align 10, but a lot of times if you were doing like azimuth, you'd try to get 15. You'd try to get 15 in your tones,
right.
Especially on half inch on your masters.
Yeah.
But on multi-track, so you had this sort of natural roll off happening. That's the reason why ribbon mics, when ribbon mics were going to lacquer, that's why people loved them, because they were very natural. And then suddenly we went to tape and it was like, oh gosh, we sort of need all these high end.
Lost too much or something.
So now the condenser mics start coming up, and right about the time condenser mics got to that point where tape machines were playing back 20K and all that, is right when digital came along. And then suddenly you had digital, it was band limited to 22K. You got weird harmonics, you got a lot of high end, a lot of 87s got sold that didn't sound very good in the 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
In digital recording is, it's supposed to be perfect. It's not. And tape machines aren't supposed to be perfect, and often they aren't. And sometimes they're exactly what the record needs.
Yeah.
But for years and years, we made records using that. And we got used to the way those records sounded. So part of what was going on is they wanted to do it all on analog, but they were north of Toronto, like 300 miles at a cabin in the woods on a mountain, And so Matt made the right choice and brought a radar.
Yeah, that's great.
And so therefore now you got 24 tracks. So you got to make some decisions, so it wasn't like Pro Tools and, we got all the tracks in the world. We have 24 tracks.
How in the world do you get anything done with only 24 tracks? All right. Well, that's great. Here's a question in from Brian. What did you notice when you, I'll just say it the way he said it. What did he notice when he installed the newer Cappy CA0252 op amps in the master section of his SSL? I'm pretty sure he dropped those in there.
Yes, I did. I loved them. They were great. I had some AM10s in there, which were running on 18 volts. Their AM10s are supposed to run on 24 volts. And they were vintage AM10s that I got from my good friend Jakir King. And they were just a really different sound. And I liked them. But putting the Cappy, whatever the number is of them.
Yeah, the 0252s.
Yeah, whatever they are. Initially, it just felt like a API mixer that I was hoping for. It just felt great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're talking about like degrees of great.
Right.
That whole better is the enemy of great.
Right.
This is actually like, oh, no, better is better.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a better that you're swapping out every day and, constantly doing. You just do it, and it's like, that sounds good. Let's go make a record. I haven't had a chance to hear the Cappy stuff yet. I have a Cappy 11 space rack that works great, but I haven't heard the.
I have two of those.
Yet. And I want to start soldering again, so I want to build some, I think, just for fun.
Not me. I buy and build.
This one comes in from Ethan X. What advice does he have for engineers aspiring to open their own room a la Sputnik? Well, the name's taken already. There's a start, right?
Man, it's a tough one. Buy gear that you can sell and make money with. Don't buy all the newest stuff. And don't buy the cheap shit. Because the cheap shit is the cheap shit.
Yeah.
Don't think the Behringer Pultec's the real Pultec. It's not. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just saying it's not a real one. I'm not saying you have to buy a real one. Like Steve Jackson is building really beautiful pieces of gear under the Pultec name because he has all the right products to do it. You can buy the Behringer or whatever it is, the Clark Technic, whatever they call it now. Pultec for like $500. Why would you spend $2,000 for one of Steve's? Or, I don't think they're even more expensive than that. Why would you do that? Well, because it's better. And in 5 years, you can sell it for that.
Yeah. So I'll throw in a little market economics in there, rock stars. If you think about inflation, which everybody's talking about that word these days, you think about the value of dollars, you think about the value of, when you have something, you want to save something, what do you do with it? Buying gear that will appreciate in value is actually a very smart way to remember you have to insure it.
Yeah. I own a Peluso 47. It's called a 2247 LE. It's great. It's a great microphone. I own two of them. Those microphones are about $2,200 to $2,700 or something like that, right? They're probably worth $2,200 to $2,700 now. Probably.
You mean years later, in other words? They held their value.
Yeah. They've held their value.
Yeah.
I own a U47. I paid $8,500 for it. They're worth $36,000 now. Mine's recorded to Chris Stapleton records.
It's worth more than that.
It's worth more than that. Just because of Proviance. The thing is that, my grandfather used to say, you should always buy the best. Buy what you want. That way you'll never be dissatisfied with your purchase. You might be dissatisfied with whatever it is you buy, but you won't be dissatisfied with your purchase. You won't have purchase anxiety. In other words, you won't be like, or whatever that's called.
I should have gotten
Yeah, I should have. Oh man, I should have got the whatever. I have tried my best in my career to only really buy things that either A, immediately have a purpose, or B, I can sell for as close to as possibly I can what I got out of it. So do I have a whole bunch of new mics that are knockoffs of other mics? Nope. I have a pair of Pelusos. Those are pretty good, but I paid $2,200 for them.
Yeah.
I can get that out of them pretty much every day. And, I bought spare parts for my 47 mount from John Peluso. So I appreciate that. But I don't have any, there's a whole bunch of brands that I can name off.
Yeah, the copy stuff.
That I don't have. Not that they're bad. Matter of fact, some of them are quite good.
Yeah.
But I just know they're not going to be worth anything in 10 years.
Fair enough.
And again, because I'm not naming names doesn't mean that I think every microphone brand out there is doing things wrong.
No.
I mean, AEA is basically one of my favorite clients. I mean, people, Wes is Wes, and, Wes is going to pass the company along here at some point. But, they are building amazing microphones.
Yeah.
John Jennings lives here in town. Royer, always building great microphones. Mojave's built some nice microphones.
You use any of the Josephson microphones?
Oh, I think they're fantastic. I don't own any.
Those Tom mics are awesome. The
Yeah.
ES-22.
And, you know, I believe, maybe I'm talking out of school here, but I believe Josephson builds the capsules for Evanis mics.
Oh, really? Interesting.
I believe. Notice I say I believe. I don't know that that's true.
That's Manly.
That's what, yeah, Manly.
Stars.
Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I own an L-Op, I own a Massive Passive, and I own a Very All three of those pieces I can sell tomorrow for exactly what I paid for them. And I wouldn't have any problem with that. I mean, I don't want to sell them. Trust me. I have a pair of Pultecs. I have a pair of the Mastering, the 1S, 1EQ, 1S.
Now, in all fairness, you got to keep them functioning in good condition.
Yeah, you got to keep all that stuff working. Yeah.
If
it doesn't work,
can't be all scratched up and beat up, and you know, you don't keep it on the bathroom floor at the bar the whole time.
I bought a Unfairchild that was a demo that was broken, and so I paid a little less money for it than what.
And it fixed itself.
It did not fix itself, but Tim and Eric and those guys were great, and they got me sorted out right away, and it was awesome.
That's great. Howdy, rock stars. Do you ever feel like you're spending all this time watching YouTube videos, trying out mixing tricks, and tweaking version after version of your mixes, but it's just like not getting you anywhere? Have you ever wished that you could have more of a simple and straightforward process for creating a pro mix that wouldn't take you years to learn? Look, what if you could have a Grammy-winning mix engineer who understood all of your mixing struggles and could actually coach you through them? If these are any of the questions that you're struggling with, then the Ultimate Mixing Masterclass is just for you. Now you can discover this proven step-by-step mixing system from Grammy-winning mixer Craig Alvin for consistently creating a pro-quality mix from your home studio that will sound amazing everywhere. Listen to this quote from one of the students. Absolutely the most informative and helpful block of information and mentoring on the mix process I've ever been a part of. It was like sitting behind a mix engineer for years, watching and picking up tips along the way, condensed into a 6 to 7 hour session. That's from David P. Look, if you already understand the basics of mixing, but you're ready to take your mixes to Grammy-winning quality, then go to ultimatemixingmasterclass.com and check it out. In fact, I'm so confident that you're going to love this, that if you can't get a great sounding mix within 30 days, just send me an email and I'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. So go ahead and take your mixes to the next level like you know you want to at ultimatemixingmasterclass.com. Okay, here's a question from Alex Oana. Alex says,
What's up, Alex?
What's up, Alex? What percentage of your mixes are you 100% happy with?
0.
There you go.
Until about 3 years later.
Right. And then you can't change it anyway.
And at that point, I'm like, wow, it's pretty damn good.
And you're like, wait, what did I do?
Yeah.
Why did I change?
No, there's a lot of times. That's really not exactly true. There's a lot of times where I'll be like, I nailed it until the second the artist walks in. And then I hear all the problems.
Yeah.
That's back to our conversation earlier about vinyl and the resetting of your brain. That's the reset of your brain. That's the deal where you suddenly stick your head out of it. Maybe you pull your head out of your own ass and you take a few breaths and you're like, wow, it's a lot better out here than where my head was just a minute ago. And you play it for the artist and you're like, oh, I hear everything wrong. All kinds of things wrong. It happens all the time. And you know, sometimes you just grin and bear it. And sometimes you're like, whoa, hold it, stop. Hold it. What am I doing? I'm totally too far into this. Give me a second.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like to say that the artist in us always thinks we can do it better. And that's what actually drives us to make great stuff in the first place. Just because it's always
I don't know that the artist always thinks we can do it better. I think sometimes the artists have a different vision in their head of what either one of two things happen. They have a different vision in their head of what they think it should be, or they don't have any vision in their head at all. And then when presented with a vision, they're conflicted by the concept that they didn't have any.
Yeah. I apologize. I sort of meant our internal creative drive, like as a
Sure,
creator.
yeah. Okay.
We're always, we hear the problems, and that drives us to try and keep making things improve.
I'm blessed again to work with Chris and Morgan Stapleton. I have somehow just have such a great rapport with them about what I feel like they want and what they feel like and what I want. And it kind of fits. Jack White had that for the longest time, and would still have that, still today. If, he wasn't, Jack sort of likes to move around and given that at one point I was like, hey, I can't do this record you want me to do because I'm booked. He was like, okay, cool. Well, I'll get Josh.
Right.
And then that was the end of that, But even doing the last Rock and Church record, he came over and hung out. We listened in the car and he loved it. And we had a great time and everybody dug it and it was all together and everything felt great. So, and I think he's sort of like the coolest rock star, in my opinion, that we have left. If you ever get a chance to go see him, man, wow. It is a fucking rock show.
Yeah.
And it's wild and there's no set list. And, it's not Fish, which is not bad because they're one of my clients, but it's like Fish maybe when they were like younger and wilder.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just,
it feels like improvisation.
It's just like,
right?
It's like sort of like really barely controlled chaos.
Yeah.
And that is awesome.
Yeah.
That's really what rock and roll should be.
I agree.
Barely controlled chaos.
I agree. I hope rock and roll just keeps, survives and lasts and keeps going.
You and me both.
Sometimes I think rock and roll forgets to speak up,
Well, we don't even know what rock and roll is these days. I mean this with no disrespect, and I really don't, but it's going to come off that way. So just take it for whatever it is. On the Blunderbuss tour, Jack wanted to hire mix engineer, like rock and roll, big time rock and roll engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And he hired basically two guys, one of them is, they're both great. So I'm not going to, like I said, this is not going to sound like it's going to sound like a diss, but I don't mean it to sound like one. They both came from Rush.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that is a thing. Cool. But they were like, not both of them, but they were kind of like dissing Jack because it was so easy for them to mix.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't technical.
Right.
It's
minimal
the
instrumentation.
engineer was saying like, yeah, I have 109 presets or 109 scenes in my monitor console for Rush, for all the different things that's changing and going on.
Right. Oh, we're talking about live stage mixing.
We're talking about live.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, you're literally watching one of the greatest purveyors of unbridled rock and roll, and you're worried about scene changes in your console.
Right.
Just turn the faders up and down. Just
Perform.
Watch the show. But like, it was a different mindset. Like their mindset was, it's like, it would be like the Steely Dan watching Iggy Pop. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe they'd appreciate it, but maybe they just thought it was a bunch of fucking noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think Steely Dan's a bunch of fucking noise. It's not my thing. The first record's okay. But, I mean, look, if you're required to use digital delays to make the delay of the best drummers in the world fit what you want, maybe you should just stop.
Yeah. You use analog delays on your drums.
Yeah, but I don't do it to put things in time.
There's another one from Alex. Alex says, what do you think are the 3 most important personal characteristics that enable success in our industry? Alex, are you suggesting that Vance is successful?
I don't know. questionable at best. Drive, determination, lack of responsibility.
Drive, determination, lack of responsibility. So drive and
Let me
determination sound like ones you want. Lack of responsibility sounds like one you want to get a handle on.
No, it's not. That's the hard one. Drive is easy. Drive is that thing that makes you want to keep making great records. Determination is the thing that makes you want to keep records, even though your ass is getting handed to you, either by somebody else or by money or by you're getting fired or your technical creation, your technical ideas, you have a technical problem, all that. The lack of responsibility thing is not exactly what it means. It's actually one of the best things I ever heard Dave Pensato say. He said that if you want to be in this business, it's best to not be responsible to anybody else. And I'm going to tell you that I disagree and 100% agree. The best thing for you personally is to be responsible to somebody else. To be responsible to your wife, to be responsible to your kids, be responsible to your dog, be responsible to your cat, your iguana, whatever.
Yeah.
Having somebody other than yourself to be responsible for is the best thing for your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst thing to do that, to be responsible to somebody and try to start out in this business. So as you get going, the business, as you get going, your business starts to going. If you've got a girlfriend or a wife or a daughter or a son or a dog or a cat or all of the above, a lot of your choices are going to be driven by them, which is very good, to the detriment of your career.
Yeah.
So drive is that thing that pushes you through it. Determination is that thing that makes you keep doing it even when you don't want to do it or people are telling you you're not very good at it. And then responsibility is the thing that makes you have to do it. So me saying lack of responsibility is really me not saying lack of responsibility. I'm saying that the lack of responsibility to other people is something that will help you. It doesn't help you with your own personal thing. It'll help you with your career.
You meaning because you'll be able to follow your own compass a little bit more accurately? Because I think that
I think what I'm getting at is that it's hard. It's hard to get a good leg up in this business, being responsible to another entity.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard on you. It's hard on your career. It's hard on your wife. It's hard on your relationships. It's hard on your kids. It's hard on you.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
we understand these things.
Yeah, totally.
One of my really good friends is Gina Johnson, where we do the Stapleton records together. Talking to Gina Johnson about like making records and having to put up with like dudes being, disrespectful to her. And then also having the pressure of, I have this career, I'm a woman in this industry, this male dominated industry. And, she got married a year ago, and then her husband went out for 6 months with, because he's in the business also, with Roger Waters. He's on the road for 6 months. They're newlyweds. Wow. And
That's
then
tough.
and then the thought of like, okay, cool, I have this career and it's going like for her, think about the responsibility concept of her, like, oh, do I want to have children? Because we know how things work in this business. Usually the raising, nurturing of children usually is, this may be, I don't mean it to be a gender misogynistic thing, but it usually falls on the women.
Right.
So does that mean she puts her whole career on, it's just all these things. Again, it's back to the responsibility thing. When I'm saying lack of responsibility, I'm saying that having responsibility is good. That'll drive you. But having it is also equally bad because it keeps a lot of people from fully reaching their potential.
Yeah.
How many people, Lidge, do you know in this business that gave up?
I mean, I've had a lot of interns in the studio, and I've seen many times.
Yeah,
where,
but I mean, again,
well, I'm
all
just talking
those
about the
interns
early too.
and like, how many of them become successful?
That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of the times, right at the very get-go, they come from school, they're excited about the studio, then they start living and trying to work, and very quickly have to go do some job, have to do something, and it's you see people struggling with just keeping their eye on the prize or know what that prize is for themselves.
We had a really good kid who was really looking like he was going to be a great assistant engineer / engineer at Blackbird for a long time. And I still follow him on Facebook. And, it's not even anywhere near the business now.
Right.
What happened? You know what happened?
Life.
Got married.
Yeah.
He got married and then he had to be responsible.
Yeah.
I'm saying that was the right choice for him. So at any time in this, I'm not saying that not being responsible is a bad thing. I'm just saying that it is a tough one to deal with.
Yeah. We're not saying that it's a fail. We're saying that it's just the ability to really excel as an expert in something like making records and stuff requires this somehow
it's a
continuing forward.
It's a compromise with your partner.
Yeah.
Your partner has to be on board or it's going to go really rough.
Jeff Powell talked about that in our interview years ago.
Yeah. Well, his wife's in the business.
Yeah.
But, it's tough. If your wife is not in the business, my wife is not in the business.
Yeah. And
for years and years and years, hated everything about it because it did nothing but take me away from her and our daughter. Yeah. And so now it's a little bit different because now we're sort of at a point where, like I can be around a lot more. Yeah. I mean, I cut down, my work hours, I go to work at 10, I go home at 7.
Sometimes you do podcasts for a really long stretch.
Yeah. Which is okay. I do this once a year. It's no big deal.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you.
And this whole week, this whole week's been CMA week. CMAs were last night. And, so I had rehearsals and blah, 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 all this stuff, but, with Chris. And, so yeah, it's fine. This week's fine. But I just, our good friend, Mark Rubel, just hit me up about having class come the next 2 weeks. I was like, 6 weeks at least, because I've got the next 5 weeks all the way up to Christmas. Solid.
That might be why I got a text from Mark too. I didn't find out yet.
Might be.
All right. Last 2 questions really quickly. This one comes in from Vanguard Audio Labs. Derek, why no Vanguards? I think he's saying it with a smiley face question, but you already talked about microphones in your studio. Do you have any thoughts for the rock stars about, so Vanguard I would describe that as a pretty great, really affordable mic
like
for
a
home studio.
Yeah, boutique.
Yeah. So do you have thoughts?
I don't know anything about them. So.
Okay. But do you have thoughts about just sort of affordable home studio mics? Any advice for the rock stars?
Well, no, I think the same thing sort of works free. If you find a microphone that works for you, then use it.
Use it. Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah.
But just know that there's a difference between a home studio and opening a studio, having a studio.
Right. Exactly.
A little bit different question here. Yeah. Shit.
What was your instrument? Did you play? I forgot what you.
I'm a terrible guitar player.
Terrible guitar player.
But I'm not even like a guitar player. I'm a guitar owner.
Yeah. And you have a bunch of guitars for producing with, right? I
do.
For making records.
I just bought a 68 D28. That's really.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, you got the one I wanted?
Yeah. Well, I've been needing that guitar. Like that.
That's the acoustic, right?
Yeah, it's acoustic.
Yeah. I need to.
The 68 Martin D28. And we're talking about a guitar that's
an investment. So when you buy a guitar too, you're thinking like what you said before.
Absolutely.
Where this is resale value. Yeah. This is investment.
I have kind of a little deal via Chris with Fender. So I bought a couple guitars. I bought a Jazzmaster, like what do they call that? It's not custom shop, but it's the mod shop. I bought a mod shop Jazzmaster, right? I bought it to go on my wall and hang on my wall in our house. And the other day, Chris played it on a track for somebody else.
Yeah. And now it's back at the studio.
It's at the studio. And it's like, shit, you know? So, same sort of deal, you know, I've got amps. I have a lot of amps.
Yeah.
And I have all the, I don't have to say I have all the keyboards, but I have all the ones that are hard to own. I have a B3. I've got a Rhodes. I got a Whirly. I got a piano. Those are all hard to own and carry around.
Especially hard to own if they were in real good shape too.
Yeah. And my B3 is badass. The Rhodes is badass. The Whirly is the best sound Whirly I've ever recorded.
Yeah.
So that's not just because it's just, I keep them maintained and I have people work on them who know what they're doing. My piano's a 1929 Kimball upright.
Nice.
It's been on over 300 records.
Wow.
I mean, people would call me to come and record it when I was off doing stuff at Blackbird. I had people come over and just record piano tracks with it.
An upright is something like I'd like to have. I have
I think Massenberg didn't rent it, but he came over and recorded it one time for a Nitty Gritty Dirt Band record.
Nice.
On a track. So I mean, you know, but again, it's a 1929 Kimball. It has the original strings. It's rattly.
Wow.
I figured out a way to mic it so that it sounds great. And you know, on a bunch of records I've done, you can hear it all over.
All right. How do we mic the 1929 Kimball upright?
So here's one. 2 Mic Tech CV7s or
C7s. Yeah, the C7. Yeah.
C7s in XY bolted to the frame of the soundbar.
Wow.
In a
so you can roll the
back.
piano where you need it in the studio. Do you move it around a little bit?
No, I just put it against the wall. It's about a foot or foot and a half off the wall, actually. And then I have a big, heavy curtain that sits on top of it that hangs over the edges.
And is the bolting just for convenience of placement,
Yes.
or does it actually bring some low end into it?
Well, I just bolted it to it because I didn't want to put mic stands back there.
That's great. Well, I'll see it at the Christmas party.
Yeah.
We're dating this. This will come out later,
Yeah.
Rockstars, but now it'll be like a time machine.
This will be like the first Christmas party in 3 years. So,
That's awesome.
well,
right.
2020, 2021.
Last question.
Yeah.
In our Facebook question. So Scott Gribble says, slightly off topic, but you should really have his brother Jeff on at some point. He's a great interview.
You had Jeff, right? You had Jeff on? Jeff Powell?
Jeff Powell.
Yeah.
I didn't. Oh, you know what? I never put 2 and 2 together.
We're not brothers.
All right.
We're brothers from different mothers.
All right. Good deal.
He's not my brother. And Chris Powell, the drummer here in town, is not my brother. And
All right.
Leroy Powell here in town is not my brother.
Awesome.
But Chris and I get it way more than Jeff and I. But yeah.
Yeah. So Scott, Jeff has been on. He was early episode. Or Scott. Yeah. Yeah, Scott, early episode. So go check that one out. I think I did a trip to Memphis and I had, Matt
I love
Rosbang
Jeff. He's
and
great.
Jeff and
His wife is fantastic.
This episode is sponsored by Recording Studio Rockstars Academy. Are you ready to take your recording, mixing, and mastering to the next level and make your best record ever? Then visit the Academy to find the course that's right for you. Want to record killer drums in your studio? Then check out Rockstars of Drums to learn how to record, edit, and mix pro-sounding drums with a professional Nashville session drummer in a Grammy-winning studio. Or if you're ready to start mastering your own records at home, then check out Rockstars of Mastering, where I walk you through exactly how I mastered my own record, Skadoosh, the soundtrack to this podcast, in fact, using nothing but plugins in PreSonus Studio One. These techniques would work for you no matter what DAW you're using right now. And if mixing is your focus, then check out my free course, Mix Master Bundle, where I show you how to mix using stock and free plugins in Pro Tools. Plus, you get a look at how I recorded everything in my studio and multi-track downloads to practice your mixing and even include in your mix portfolio if you want. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started now, or look for the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. All right, so closing question. You've answered it before. It's hypothetical. You take the Wayback Studio machine, you go find younger Vance, and you say, come back to give you this bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know to be a rock star of this studio yourself. What advice? Is it the same advice or does it change for you? And what advice would you like to go back and give yourself?
I think I said buy Apple or something like that last time.
Yeah.
I was like, buy Apple.
Well,
No,
definitely today, not buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, Bitcoin. Well, we can have a long conversation about that because I know you're a Bitcoiner, but yeah.
We'll do a dedicated episode for that one.
Do what?
We'll do a dedicated episode for that one.
Yeah. I don't know anything about it except it feels like a house of cards built on top of a paper tablecloth over the top of a pair of toothpicks. But that's just maybe me. I think the big thing to do is that you got to do it. You got to keep doing it, and you got to keep your eye on growing. So I would just probably have told myself to keep doing what I was doing and keep believing that it will pay off. Because if you give up, you just give up. I had a couple moments in my career where it would have been really, really easy because of, to be honest with you, a lack of responsibility.
Right.
Really easy to just give up. And what I mean by giving up is, giving up on the dream of getting out of my small town, right? Going somewhere and making something that lasts. Because really that's what we all want. We want to make the best music we can possibly make. And we want somebody 10 years from now to say, man, I love that record you did.
To put it on vinyl, rock stars.
Well, put it on vinyl, yeah, of course. But more so like, man, I just, when I was coming up, I loved the way that record sounded. That's the best thing anybody can say to me. And I always am just like, I literally like, it gets me like, I kind of get a little fluffy about it. Because it just means so much to me, because that's all I've ever wanted to do is make something that lasts. I'm probably not really smart with money. I've made a fair amount of money, not like money, but
not stupid money.
Yeah, not stupid money. If I would have been smart, I wouldn't have built a studio. I would have I surely wouldn't have bought an SSL. I surely wouldn't have bought a wall of outboard gear. I surely wouldn't have done that. I would have got no offense. I would have bought some S1s or some sort of control surface, a few outboard mic pre's, which that's all I have anyways, outboard mic pre's. I would have bought some mic pre's, and, I would have spent $50,000 and, build a studio.
Right. The rest would have gone into Apple.
Huh?
And then the rest
would have gone into Apple, and I could have retired by now to Barbados or Portugal, which seems to be maybe my future. No, I'm just kidding. No, maybe not Portugal.
I think it's important for us to remember that the investing in the studio, it's one of the benefits of what we get to do is when you want to buy something for yourself, we buy things that are part of our work.
I've been in Sputnik, the current Sputnik. This will be 9 years coming around here. It's in June. We're 8.5 years.
Right, because you used to be on the over
down
East
the street,
Iris, right? Right.
For a fair portion of that, I had a $13,500 a month nut.
Wow.
So I could have completely cut that down to $3,000. Well, I could have cut down to $5,000 a month by just buying a control surface and mixing in the box.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? I wouldn't have had a client like Jack White.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he wasn't going to do that. The beauty is Chris doesn't really care as long as it sounds great.
Yeah.
So I can do, and we have hybrids. There have been things that I mixed this next record that's coming out. I did rough mixes in my hotel room on headphones, and a bunch of those, the bass, the core of that is going to make it to the record. So we'll see what those end up being.
Your mixes sound great, and I listen to a lot
of
playlists and a lot of mixes, and
I don't want to be pigeonholed into things.
No, but I listen to mixing in the box, and I'm loving learning how to do that better too. but there is a quality of what I hear in your mixes that it's not.
Well, thanks.
It's not quite the same
So,
thing. So
you know, I'm a big fan of chaos, and I think that, you know, mixing Pro Tools or anything in analog is all chaos.
yeah,
And because, you know,
the electrons they go different ways.
They
at
bounce
times.
different ways. I mean, you know, I'm not the person who said this first, but one of my favorite things that I love saying is, you know, math is little g God. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Math is math. 10 and 10 is always 20. It's never not 20.
Right.
10 of something and 10 of something is always 20.
Yeah, your teacher never let you try one of 5 answers for a question.
Yeah, no.
There was one right one. The rest were wrong.
Well, but in math, there's only one answer.
Right.
You know, so you started getting calculus and all that. But still in the end, there's only one answer. Right? Big G God, which, you know, whoever that may be to you or even to me, it doesn't work like that. That's chaos. You know, every coastline in the United States looks the same from 100 feet up. But from 10 microns or 10 feet or 1,000 feet, they're all different. Even though they're exactly the same. They all have sand, usually. They all have water. And it's coming, it's going. You know, that is the ocean and beaches, and the ocean is all chaos. That's some big G shit. You know, and that to me is what that's what music is. So music starts as people playing instruments that are small g. It goes out into the air, and the distance between people, the connection or whatever it is, that's the big G shit.
Yeah.
And then the way your ear catches it, that's big G shit. And the way your brain functions and listens to it, that's some big G shit. That's not math. It's not. It's everything but math. One of the things that people talk about tape, and they talk about tape and warmth and all that, that's all the worst bullshit on the planet. Plugins and all that. Yes, you can get a sound to sound a little bit like tape, but you can't get the thing that makes tape. And that is that from the time you hit play to the time you hit stop, if you timed that spot and marked both of those spots, rewound it and hit it again, it would never be exactly the same time.
Right.
Ever. Because it can't. Even with a synchronizer, controlling a servo motor, it will still never be exactly the same. Because the motor, the mechanics, the tape, the weight, the idlers, the temperature of the air in the room, the moisture of the air, none of that has anything to do with it. That means every tempo and every pitch center is moving a little bit. Kind of like the ocean. A little bit, just a little bit, it's moving. That's some big G shit. Yeah. Because that's all chaos. It's all chaos. And when you take a digital form, which is math, small g shit, and you put it into a console where electrons are bouncing around and moving around all over the place, and sometimes channel 5's EQ, that fourth capacitor in the EQ circuit is a little different than it was yesterday, that's 100% chaos.
I'm going to add to that. I'm going to throw in another pitch for why picking up a mic like a Vanguard mic, like that question, is a great idea, especially at a home studio level, is because otherwise you might be faced with thinking that your option for getting great sounds is to use all these in-the-box sounds, these digital synths and samples and libraries. And the one beauty of putting microphones up is you're far more likely to end up with an original sound that has that big G accumulation of stuff that you can't predict than if you make everything out of.
I think a lot of people are believing that plugins are the sound of things. A friend of mine who works over at Claire was saying that all these like new mixers who are mixing a lot of your young country and young rock bands, you know, they'll send over their thumb drive or their file, and every channel has 5 plugins on it. Because in their mind, that's what it needs. Even though every digital console has EQ and compressors and all that built in, they need these 5 things to make their sound. And,
and are you talking about live stuff?
That's live stuff. But the same thing's happening in records.
Yeah.
It doesn't take very long nosing around in the forums, shall we say, to find people talking about, 7 plug-in deep vocal chains.
Right.
What the fuck?
I don't know. What do I do? I just keep putting shit on there. If I think it needs some, I'll try putting some on there, see what it does.
Yeah.
But
that's what we do anyway.
More often than not, I find myself also falling into that quagmire of there was something great about the rough mix, and now I just worked so hard in the mix, and I'm not sure. Do I like it better or worse?
Rockstars, one thing is really important. If you're mixing a record that comes from somebody else, you have to get the rough mix. You have to. First of all, you may not have all the files. This has been happening to me all week.
Yeah.
You may not have all the files, and you may not have the right arrangement. That's the first thing. Secondly, you need to listen to the rough mix because there's something about that rough mix people liked. Because if people didn't like it, they wouldn't send it to you.
Yeah.
So listen to it. And then your job is to make it better. That's all your job is. Just make it better. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to put 10 EQs on every channel. You don't have to sidechain compress shit. You don't have to do all that. Just make what that is better. Just make it better and stick your thumb in the cake in the corner and leave it at that.
And as Richard Dodd says, for goodness sake, at least don't make it worse.
Just don't make it worse. Exactly.
Vance, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks for having me over here.
For our annual interview. Let the rock stars know where they can go learn more about you, check out your stuff.
You can always find me. You just Google, If you Google, you'll find, I have a webpage. It's just my phone number and my address. The studio has a webpage, but I have never updated the picture of my side of Sputnik Sound because there's plenty of things out on the internet you will find. Actually, at the moment, Lidge has a whole embarrassing list on his huge 50-inch screen behind his console of me looking at me.
55, man. 55.
Yeah. It's me looking at me. Of all kinds of videos with my name on it, you can find me on there. My management is Global Positioning Services Management. There's a page there. You can always reach me there. Vance at vancepowell.com. That's one of my emails. You can always reach me there. I don't always reply, but I try to.
All those thumbnails on YouTube, it's a really great testament to beard consistency.
Well, I don't do anything to it. So there you go.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, great to see you again. Rockstars, thank you for listening. Thanks. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And we'll see you around the studio, man.
Be safe.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. And if you want more free content from Recording Studio Rockstars, all you have to do is go to rsrockstars.com/email. Again, that's rsrockstars.com/email to enter your name and email, and I'll keep you in the loop with articles, videos, podcast updates, and even free gear giveaways for your studio. Just look for the link in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lidge Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Hey, rock stars. I want to give a big thank you to our amazing sponsors who help make this episode possible. OWC, JZ Microphones, Atom Audio, Isotope, Spectra 1964, and Samply. Plus, remember to use these coupon codes for special discounts. At isotope.com/rockstars, use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plugin purchase. At jzmic.com, use the code ROCKSTAR for 40% off the V47, V67, or V12 microphones. Plus, get a free shock mount worth $120. And at Samply.app, use the coupon code RSR20 for 20% off. And at recordingstudiorockstars.com/academy, use the coupon ROCKSTAR for 10% off. If you enjoy Recording Studio Rockstars, then please check out our sponsors using the link in our show notes because it's a great way to help support this show. These are all things that I use in my own studio, and I highly recommend them for your studio as well. They're going to help you make your best record ever. I want to also thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Braden Stremming, for additional podcast and video production. Thanks so much for listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.